नहीं, बोर्ड अभी नहीं है, बोर्ड अभी नहीं है।
ठीक है जी, लाइट चले गए।
नहीं पहुंच रही है
और
सिस्टम आपका हो गया। नहीं वो इलेक्ट्रिशियन
यहाँ पर ट्रेंड नहीं आ रही जी, जिसको
मेरे पास है।
टू है ना यहाँ का भी।
पहले वाले में मैंने ये नहीं भाई क्या बात है पीछे तो लगेंगे चार
ठीक
नहीं आ गया ठीक ओके क्या हुआ आपको मैं
proud of myself to be representing Pakistan. And I want other young girls to do the same. For us to not just one Raheen Fatma, but for us to be so many thousands of girls representing Pakistan in all places, in all walks of life, because there's only a certain thing that I can cover. There's only one thing that may be my forte, but there may be a lot of great fashion designers and IT experts that may come out of Pakistan, but what they need is opportunity. What they need is mentorship. And we at Elevate Her, we want to create that network of girls where they can find all the things that they may need succeed, that they may need to succeed. And for us to be their helping hand during their journey of exploring and exposing. And I'm also starting my own business, which is Passion Fruit. And I'm hoping to launch that soon. But now that I end this by telling my story of how I got here and sharing my voice, I say the only way that we can create a balanced and inclusive future is by looking around us. I may be affecting it with promoting gender equality through Elevate Her, through Passion Fruit, through my own personal brand. But you guys need to see around you. Now let's do a little exercise if you guys are up for it. Because I remember when I was thinking of what should I have as a call to action at the end of this talk, I was really confused. What is going to be the right thing? I was like, well, let's have like a cool exercise. Let's have them feel what I would feel up on that stage. So I would encourage all of you guys to close your eyes if you feel comfortable to, and just think with me for a second. When I say, and I've mentioned this a lot during my talk, is our perfect future, an inclusive and balanced future, what do you see? Do you see green tech around? Do you see our children being educated? Do you see gender equality? Do you see thriving businesses? Do you see a lot of tech, like a sci-fi movie, like really cool, like the AI and everything? What do you see? What you will see is going to be what speaks out to you the most. And my call to action would only be, let's keep that feeling in our heart. Let's come together next year on this very stage and share all the things that we have done to get to that feeling, to come a little closer as individuals. Thank you very much to give me the opportunity to speak here today. It has been a great experience. And I hope that you guys have some very good questions. I'm really looking forward to that. And the next speaker. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Raheen. Now, one thing that I have to say is, Raheen, for anyone who was at my session 2 days ago on student agency, it was talking about agentic learners, about taking that voice, choice, and ownership. Now, that is something exactly that Raheen has done. We need to empower our youth to succeed for the future. At the moment, Pakistan is experiencing a huge brain drain. That needs to stop. Now, many of you here are heads from Beaconhouse School Group, but I can see in the audience we also have people from Learning Alliance International. We've got Sharia Salamat from SICAS here as well. We need to work together as a community of educators to make sure that we can raise the profile of our students globally around the world. Now, the next person I would like to introduce, sadly had to pre-record his video because he is actually based in the US. I spent a lot of time with him and his father, and it was delightful to actually listen to their stories. His name is Ryan Hickman. So let me just give you a very quick introduction. At the age of 14 years old, Ryan Hickman is arguably the most famous recycling advocate on the planet. And you've probably seen him on TV or on social media talking about how we can all make a difference by recycling. He's been named one of the top 100 most influential people of Orange County, California, and one of the top 10 kids changing the world by MSN. Reader's Digest includes him in the top kids of the decade, changing the world list. Ryan is the founder of Ryan's Recycling, his non-profit Project 3R, and a new residential recycling collection service with the state of California called Recycle from Home. Now, Ryan has also been on the Ellen DeGeneres show twice and is actually a very, very well-spoken person. So please, if you can watch the video now as well. Hopefully it's working.
Hi everyone, my name is Ryan Hickman. I'm 14 years old and I live in the state of California here in the United States. I'm really excited to be part of the School of Today conference and speaking to you all today. Please bear with me a little bit today. I'm used to giving keynote speeches to inspire kids all over the world, but this is my first time talking to adults about influencing change and inspiring their students. I hope I can leave you all with a little bit of wisdom today from a kid's point of view. So, for those who don't know my story, I recycled nearly 2 million cans and bottles, and I also started a nonprofit and 2 companies based around recycling. Being a kid, I knew my direction and I wanted to go in it, but I needed help from adults in my life, which includes my parents and my teachers. When I was about 3.5 years old, my dad took me to our local recycling center with a few small bags of plastic bottles, and I thought the recycling center was probably the most exciting place I've ever been to. I was so excited about recycling, I asked my entire neighborhood to start recycling with me. I would give everyone bags each week and collect their cans and bottles, and then take it to the recycle center. That's kind of when I started Ryan's Recycling Company. I'm not sure why I liked it so much, but it's all I could think about. I was very focused, and I wanted to recycle as much as possible. We live near the ocean, so I would see bottles sometimes in the water or washed up on shore, and my dad explained to me how it was harming the environment. I figured recycling was a way I could make a difference in saving the planet. Plus, I even made a little money too. I started recycling small, of course, but within a month or so, I started getting requests to come to other neighborhoods to pick up cans and bottles. Instead of getting $10 or $20 every time I go to the recycle center, I'm now getting $50 and sometimes even $100. Everyone wanted me to come recycle. I got my entire elementary school to start recycling in all the classrooms. All my teachers were so supportive. I collect cans and bottles from everyone who called me, and then me and my dad would go pick up the items, take them home and sort them. Then when we had enough, we would take the load of recycling to the recycle center. So here in California, if you recycle a plastic bottle or aluminum can, you get between 5 and 10 cents back from the redemption center. A lot of people don't care and just throw them away, so I figured, why not start asking people to save them for me? When I was first starting out, my dad and I load up his truck and we would go to the recycle center about maybe once a month. As business grew, we started going more frequently. Soon, we were into the recycle center twice a month, then every weekend, like we do now. My dad helped me make business cards, flyers, and we even built a website. My dad and I started posting photos on Facebook of us at the recycle center. We even made t-shirts on t-shirts with my logo and started selling them on my website. How cool is that? I donated all the money that we made from the shirt sales to help support the Pacific Marine Mammal Center. They rescue sick and injured seals and sea lions. In early 2016, my first grade teacher, who was really instrumental in helping me follow my dream of recycling, had a reporter from our local newspaper come and talk to our whole class. The reporter interviewed me about my little recycling business and then decided to do an actual story about me in our local town paper. A lot of our local community read about me and what I was doing. A few months later, we posted a picture of me on Facebook with a caption that I saved up about $10,000, which I believe is about 2.8 million Pakistani rupees, when my story suddenly viral. I started getting thousands of emails and letters each day from all over the planet. I started getting interview requests, and I started going on TV programs talking about what I do. Suddenly, I was the face of a new generation of kids taking care of our planet. My little recycling business had gone global. I started getting partnerships requests from companies all over the world, and I started speaking at events and appearing on TV shows all over the world. I was even on billboards, magazine ads. I guess I was an influencer before I even knew it. Today, Ryan's Recycling still picks up recyclables all over my community, but it also branched out into me starting a nonprofit called Project 3R. In my 10 years of recycling, I also realized that I really like cleaning up the beach and leading community beach cleanups. So I started a nonprofit organization called Project 3R, and guess what? It's going great. I'm getting support from a lot of people, and we're making a big difference together. I spend about maybe 10 to 15 hours a week recycling and doing beach cleanups. Now, I have a team of educators that go to classrooms and speak to students, and we also organize trips for classrooms to come ride on a boat, and they learn about taking care of our planet or oceans and what they can do as kids to make a difference. It's super cool to see Project Terra grow into what it is today. I tell adults every single action you do makes a difference. So when you pick up a random piece of trash or recycle a plastic bottle, it's making the world a better place. And that goes with the same with working with you too. An encouraging word or extra time spent with a kid might just lead them in a direction that they would have or that they wouldn't have the courage or resources to do on their own. If my dad wouldn't have told me that he was too busy to take me to get recyclables when I started, or my teachers wouldn't have supported my passion, I may have lost focus or the vision of my dream. So I've had so many people ask me how I got started or what keeps me going. I always tell people that my parents and teachers always supported me and encouraged me. And I told them that if I could do anything that I put my mind to, guess what? You guys can too. Over the past 7 years, I traveled all over the world talking to people about my story and recycling with them. I met all sorts of famous people, and I can't even remember how many interviews I've done. I've been featured in hundreds of magazines, books, TV programs, and I'm even part of many school study programs all over the world where kids in classrooms learn about how important it is to recycle. Last summer, I got to speak to kids in South America, and I also got to go in a submarine in the Mediterranean Sea with Ocean X to check out a shipwreck. And I even got to recycle a bottle from the bottom of the ocean floor. I tell you guys all these things because you never know where your opportunities you focus on may lead you. I want to show you guys something crazy. My dad and I go to pick up trash at the beach every weekend. You go at the end of the day before dark, and we always find abandoned beach toys. I clean up the toys and I post them on my Instagram page. This picture is 18 months worth of beach toys found during the pandemic. All the good toys were washed and sent to kids in Ghana, Africa. Crazy, right? These were all left behind by people, so you can imagine the amount of trash left behind as well. Sometimes it drives me crazy, but it also encourages me to keep going. So if you have the opportunity to mentor youth that aren't into beach cleanups, recycling, or trying to save the planet, but they might come up with an idea for a new product or provide a service. They might be involved with volunteer work in your community. Maybe they'll write a book or make videos inspiring other people. Maybe they don't have the confidence to get started on their own, but they need your encouragement to push forward. The sky's the limit, trust me. Everyone has the power inside them to make it successful. It just takes a little focus and determination. I tell kids all the time, don't be afraid to make mistakes or ask me for help. I ask my mom and dad for help all the time in my business, and I'm constantly trying to find new ways to make things work. I rely on a lot of people to help me succeed. Remember, teamwork makes the dream work. My message to kids all over the world is not be afraid to follow your dreams because you never know how far it might take you. I'm living proof. Success may take a lot of hard work and time to figure out, but keep taking forward steps, even if they're small, to get to your goals, and you may just amaze yourself with what you can do. Us kids can make a real difference in the world, and we're the next generation of leaders. I met so many amazing kids all over the world who are leading the ways of their ideas. I just want to say thank you for listening to me speak to you all today, and I hope I inspired you a bit to think about how you might uplift youth to change the world or start something of your own. Remember, take small steps and stay focused. Don't get discouraged when something gets in the way of your plans. Figure out a way around that problem and it will make you even stronger. Thank you, everyone. I hope I inspired you today to know how big of a role you play in making a difference in others' lives. And if you have any questions about recycling or what I do, or just want to say hi, send me an email or note through social media. Thanks, guys.
Now, I've got to say that Ryan Hickman is a complete inspiration. And when he said that he is a leader of tomorrow, it is very, very, very true. Talking about leaders, now Monis was going, why here with two very young people? Monis is actually not that old himself, but he's one of the original startup in Pakistan. as well. So Monas is one of Pakistan's internet pioneers. He is passionate about digitally connecting the bottom of the pyramid with the top, combining jobs, credit, and commerce. He has founded 3 venture-backed startups in Pakistan, including the country's largest employment and professional financial wellness platform to help professionals and blue-collar workers find jobs and achieve financial health. Finja, and I hope I pronounced that one right, Pakistan's largest digital leading fintech, helping small and micro businesses get unsecured loans, and currently full-time CEO at Dukan, a digital commerce, payments, and lending ecosystem for MSMEs and their supply chains. So I'd like to invite Monas to the stage. I would also say that's a very short part of Monas's profile, knowing him. And I know that he's going to have a lot to say that will actually inspire the youth here, but also all the adults. Monas, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ian, for that great introduction. Apologize for all of those very long words squished in a very small amount of space. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I've got, where all of the previous speakers and I were in the same age group, approximately plus or minus 40 years or so. But I was very inspired to hear them, because what I want to talk to you about today is how much power we have to make change, how much power we have to make impact. And that power comes from the motivated youth who've grown up with the technologies I'm about to speak about, and sort of how much they've evolved. So with people like Raheen and Ryan, I'm very optimistic, coupled with this new magic wand that we have. I'm going to be saying this a lot in this talk. We all have a magic wand now that we can do things with that were magical, that were unimaginable previously, and that's your mobile phone. And now we have this whole AI genie that's out of the bottle. So the kind of impact that can be created today in Pakistan is unimaginable. And in the hands of youth and their creativity, and the fact that they've grown up with these platforms and are growing up with these platforms, I'm super optimistic. So let me rewind a little bit. I'm going to take you back to 2003. When I moved back to Pakistan, I came from the Valley. I had done a startup over there. I was living in an area where funding was being invested every month, and clients were being created. Amazon. And that evolution, going from the late 90s to today in Pakistan, what we're seeing certain parallels that are happening. When I moved back to Pakistan in 2003, there were about 1.8 million internet users in Pakistan. 1.8 million. Today, you have almost 80 million internet connected users on smartphones. That's about 70% of adults in Pakistan today have an internet connected smartphone. 1.8 million users meant that whatever online services we could offer, whatever change we were trying to bring to the ecosystem, was limited to this group of 1.8 million relatively affluent, educated internet users who used to connect to the net from their office. I remember when we launched our jobs platform, the first reaction was, at that time, I'm talking about 2008 now, the reaction was, ye idhar nahi ho sakta. These things don't happen in Pakistan, they happen abroad. This is not how we behave. We don't buy things online. We don't trust the internet with our credit cards. This is the sort of environment through which we launched. And we launched this job platform, and everybody who advertised in newspapers at that time, agar aapko yaad hai, the newspapers used to get a lot of money from advertising. We believe, because it happened everywhere else in the world, that there was an opportunity to disrupt this print classified, which was slow, cumbersome, paper CVs. The older people here will remember when we used to apply for jobs. We'd get Sunday classified newspapers and circle the jobs and then go to some place to print those CVs on nice paper, put them in envelopes and mail out the CVs. Remember that? Anybody remember that? not too far back, but our children will never know that horrible experience because it was inevitable that this would move online, jobs would move online. So we started Rosie.pk in Pakistan from a small room of my house. Now it's grown quite a bit. We have about 65,000 employers using the platform and 10 million professionals who now apply for jobs, and we've helped over 1 million people find jobs completely through this online internet network. We disrupted jobs in newspapers, and it was very tough because we were nobody operating in a small room of my house. We took on the media giants who would make their revenue through classified ads in editions on Sundays. So there was a very acrimonious sort of relationship between this young startup wanted to take jobs online and traditional print, who first didn't believe that a startup could do this or this could even happen. They were relying on their old brand, which had a lot of strength and a lot of history. And they reacted too late. And as a consequence, we've seen one industry miss the boat. And this is the print media, and the media industry is now trying to catch up, not just Pakistan, but globally. Now, this is happening over and over again. I'll fast forward you a little bit. Our jobs platform started to take off. We had 65,000 employers now posting jobs, 10 million people applying with CVs, and we got a lot of data. And we saw that people started to shift from their ISDN, DSL connections. Now they started to use the cell phone. They started applying on their phones. And then we had other problems. The other problem we had is now people are posting jobs and they need to pay us. This is how we make money. But how do you collect money on the internet in Pakistan? I'm talking about 2008. It was very difficult. So we had a sales team that would go on bikes to clients and say 3,000 rupees, 800 rupees, and they would get checks and cash. And it was very difficult to scale that. Your cost of collection is as much as the amount they're paying you. It moves slowly. You can't grow as fast. So I became very interested in figuring out how to solve the payments problem. Smartphones were taking off. We saw it. Everybody has a smartphone now. We saw this happening before. When I was in the US in the Valley, the PayPal founders were friends. I saw the evolution, how it was created and how it became very mainstream. So around that time, State Bank of Pakistan had launched this branchless banking regulations. And what that means in simple terms is, first time in history of Pakistan, the regulator, our banking regulator, gave permission to licensed financial institutions to open up accounts outside of a branch, which meant you could do it on a cell phone. So I co-founded a startup called Finja, which got the first license to do this as a non-bank. And we launched the first smartphone wallet before Jazz Cash and before Easy Pesa, which allowed you for the first time in Pakistan's history to create a bank account on a phone. And it was just an amazing experience. Magic wand. Felt like you had a magic wand. Anything could happen now. We've opened a bank account on a phone. And frankly, at that time, we thought this is it. Discovered gold. Fast forward a little bit, what started happening is Jazz Cash, Easy Pesa, and the other big financial players came in. We didn't have a lot of money. We were set up. And they were able to spend $200 million, $300 million, acquire users, give airtimes as incentive. And there was a very big churn. So people who joined wallets would join for an incentive and they'd drop off. It's very clear that this was not a game we could win. So although you were the first, it doesn't mean that you're going to be the biggest and the best enduring. It's a lesson. But what we did discover is now on the back of this mobile wallet, these digital transactions that are happening, we could get footprints of commerce, footprints of behavior. And we used those footprints. These were the sort of digital footprints that we used to credit score. We were able to algorithmically, through a bit of math, figure out how trustworthy people were and how much debt they could absorb and repay reliably. So we did the first smartphone-based loans. And we also discovered that the place we wanted to give these loans was not to somebody who wanted to buy a new air conditioner or a TV. What became very exciting was in Pakistan, our economy is largely offline. We have a GDP of, it used to be about $250 billion. Our GDP has been contracting. Everybody knows what's happening in the country. But guess what? The online economy has grown 900% in the last 3 years. The digital payments, the payments you make for airtime, top-ups, bills, last 3 years has grown 900%. It's among the fastest. So this economy, which is contracting, is moving online. So while your overall incumbent economy is shrinking, the digital economy is growing very quickly. E-commerce, payments, loans, and lending. And the segment that I have become obsessed with, because I believe there's maximum impact that we can make with this magic wand in my pocket, in your pocket, this magic wand, which allows us to do a number of things, is take these micro and small entrepreneurs and help them join the digital economy, because surely they're being left behind. Whoever doesn't have a smartphone today and doesn't have ability to make payments and doesn't have ability to conduct commerce on this phone is being left behind. 40% of our GDP are these small MSMEs, SMEs, the store on the corner, the Kriana stores, the boutiques, the restaurants. They're being left behind because this is a complicated technology to master. It has very sophisticated English. You have to learn what e-commerce is, and you have to get servers and payment gateways. This is the power that these new kids, your students, are going to graduate as natives and be able to bridge that gap. So we learned how to give credit to small businesses so they could buy stock, inventory to sell. This is productive credit. It means if you're a small business and I give you a loan of 100,000 rupees, I know that by the time you sell the products, you're going to make 20% on that. But you can't make that extra revenue because nobody's willing to bet on you because you're undocumented and banks don't lend. You don't get access to financial services. You can't use e-commerce because you don't understand what a server is and how to integrate an API to a payment gateway. But these are all very solvable problems, and this is what we do as indigenous entrepreneurs who are from this land and care about this country and care about the impact we make. Financial incentives, they come later. It's really impact driven. So now through the Finja platform, we learned that we could give unsecured digital purchase. And we helped SMEs increase their revenue by around 40%, increase their income by about 40%. This is amazing because this segment was not lent to, and we did it reliably without asking them for house papers or any collateral. And guess what our default rate was on those loans? Only 3%. You can trust people if you use data correctly. And now what we're doing with our Dukaan e-commerce platform is we have built accessible tools to provide any SME with digital banking and e-commerce infrastructure so they can get going easily. Complicated words, very simple app in Urdu. Create your storefront, upload your products, payment gateways are all there. And now you can start selling on the internet. We connect businesses with their suppliers. We give the suppliers an online stack as well so they can start trading. We clock those transactions, we credit score them. We embed credit, digital finance and credit, now accessible all the way down to the bottom of the pyramid because almost 80% of adults now have digitally connected smartphones. On top of this, let's sprinkle this new magic that you're hearing about, AI. We're still trying to understand what this means. But I'll tell you once again, everybody's been saying it, it is a game changer. I'm almost at the end of my talk. I'm getting a prompt here. So I'll just wrap up with this. When you look at AI and the capabilities and the fact that now these AI engines like ChatGPT speak Urdu, Roman Urdu as well as Urdu, and you can have conversations and you can automate, this gives us a powerful tool to take this magic wand all the way down to the bottom of the pyramid, let people use it, get financial services, get e-commerce, make more money, and this prosperity trickles up. So my time is up. That's what I'll leave you with, but I think the future is very promising, and clearly we're in good hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Monas. Monas, don't leave the stage yet. Okay, so we have one question that we're going to go from the audience, because actually many of the Beaconhouse people here have been asking me to sing and close. So I've actually said, yes, I am going to sing. as well. And a song that's actually for, I know, it wasn't planned.
I'm just terrified you're going to ask me to sing. That's why.
Well, actually, no.
Thank you.
Shahryar can come up and do a duet with me instead, okay? So the question, now it's quite a thoughtful question in many respects. What about the people who lose all their hope, who lose their ambition? What about them?
Yeah, I mean, so it's very easy to lose hope in these times. Inflation's at 40%. Economy isn't going well. The political, I mean, yeah. So it's very easy to get depressed in this country and feel like you're trapped. But everything I've just said, this magic wand I just spoke about, there's so much reason for hope. Education is moving to this magic wand. It's increasingly accessible. Jobs, skills, opportunities. So the sort of opportunities that we have are all moving here. And one of the things I just want to say in response to that question, it's a great question. We're worried about AI that will lose jobs as a result of AI. AI helps the less skilled more than it helps the super skilled. So when you have a population that has a low skill set, AI helps it reach a much higher skill set in terms of work they can produce. So who benefits the most? Us, our country, our people. So these are tools that we have to use, and I think this whole inspiration and hopefulness comes from seeing these things in motion.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Jonas. Now, I'm going to keep you on stage while I sing this to all of you. Now, there's a story behind this as well. So every year, I sing at the TNS graduation. And I trained as a classical singer as well before I went into education. So it shows you that we all have dreams and aspirations that we can follow. So hopefully this goes okay. Let's go. Yeah? Don't leave, Monas.
I'm here.
I'm sure song. Get that off. They're playing the countdown instead of the song. Okay, that could be quite entertaining. And we start again. Hopefully it should be a showstopper. And now the end is the final curtain. My friends, I'll say it clear. I'll state my case, of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full. I've traveled each and every highway and more, much more than this. I did it my way. Regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do, and do without exemption. I planned each shot of course, each little step along the byway, and more, much more than this, I did it my way. So whatever time, I'm sure you knew, when I bit off more than I could chew. But through it all, when there were doubts, I ate it up and spit it out. The record shows I took the soul and did it my I've laughed and cried, I've had my fill, my share of losing, and now, as tears subside, I find it all so amusing to think I did all that, and may I say, not in a shy way. Oh no, 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 not me. I did it my way. For what is a man? What has he got? He's not himself, then he has not to say the thing he truly feels, and not the word of one who kneels. The record shows I took the blow and did it my way. Yes, we did the SOT way. On behalf of everybody from the SOT, I would like to thank everybody for being here today. It's been a total pleasure with my three amazing speakers as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ayan. It was great to have you here, and we loved the way you ended the session. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We'll have the next session in 10 minutes. Hope you have seen the Gallery 6 for art displays. And please do visit that and come back in 10 minutes, inshallah. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Kim.
Hello.
Audio.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, Kim, we can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, that's great. So the audience is just settling in. And could you just try presenting your screen so that I can be sure that people can see your screen as well?
Certainly. Oh, hang on. I'm struggling to share my screen. Can you see my
Okay.
presentation?
Hello.
Hello, can you see my presentation?
Professor Kim, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you please try presenting again your
Oh, is
screen?
it not working?
For some reason, yeah. So the tech guy is asking me to tell you to present again.
Okay, hang on.
Okay, great.
So you can see that, can you?
I can
That
see your screen, Professor Kim,
you can. Good.
but the audience can't. So that's a problem. I'm trying to sort it out. Just give me one. Apologies.
That's all right. I'll leave it ready presenting.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all settled down so that we can start. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the 16th edition of School of Tomorrow events, Guardians of the Future, Shaping Tomorrow with Generative AI. The non-profit SOT event series was launched by Beaconhouse in 2000 to engage global communities in conversations that shape the future of schools and societies. I would like to thank Google for Education, the lead sponsor for SOT 2023, and their partner TechValley, our titanium sponsor UBL. Other key sponsors include My Backpack, MK Books, Allied Bank Limited, Habib Bank Limited, Wateen, and Interwood. We also thank our SOT supporters, including Paramount Books, Nestle Pure Life, who have contributed to this year's event. My name is Sadia Chand, and I'm the branch head at Beacon House F74 campus. Please take a moment to note these important points. Please ensure your cell phones are silent. In case of an emergency, the exit point is at the back. Please stay calm and follow directions. Please use the SOT app and the QR code and feedback. Share your thoughts on social media using hashtag Guardians of the Future and SOT 2023. In case of assistant, our ushers are here to help you. For questions, please either use the flashcards or the mobile app. Now, this is a session regarding a workshop, so this is going to be an interactive session. I would like to introduce the facilitator, Professor Kim Inslee. She is an associate professor with leadership roles at
the IOE part of the Department of Curriculum, Pedagogy and Assessment, led by Professor Arthur Chapman. She is the program lead for the MA and Graduate Diploma in Advanced Educational Practice and oversees an online program for teachers' development. Kim's work includes international teacher education, consultancy, professional development in various countries. She also designs courses for teachers and promotes university education. Ms. Kim, I welcome you to the 2023. Now the stage is all yours.
Thank you very much indeed for that introduction. And I'm hoping that everyone can see my presentation title and the Menti code to help with this interactive presentation. I'm delighted to be here and I hope that all goes well. I know it's new technology for you. It's also new technology for me. I've actually never presented using only Mentimeter before, which is what I'm doing today. So as was explained, I'm an associate professor at the UCL Institute of Education. That's where the IOE is the Faculty of Education and Society for UCL. The IOE in its own right is number one in the world for education. Yes, we beat Cambridge, Oxford, and even MIT over in the States. That's because our research is held at a great deal of depth. We beat those numbers by those other faculties by a very high margin. My presentation today is aimed to share with you my most recent research, which is actually still ongoing. It is a case study of the PGCE teacher development, a program which, as has been explained, is fully online, but designed to bring research about teaching to teachers wherever they are. We have the third cohort from Beaconhouse studying the program. They started in September of this year, and they should complete in September of next year. The second cohort started last March, and they're completing the second module at the moment, finishing in March next year. The first cohort have actually fully completed, and will hopefully be invited for the presentations later. The program is an internationally accredited award. So that means it demonstrates participants' ability against agreed international criteria. But it does not include qualified teacher status in the UK, QTS. Now that's for a very good reason. We are attempting to avoid and move away from a colonialist approach to our learning and teaching. That is telling you how to do it. That's because the program uses your knowledge. You're already experts in learning and teaching, and those of your own critical friend, the one you choose to support you, to apply your understanding of theories of learning and teaching in your context. So for the session today, you will probably need note paper and pens, and your smartphone. I've been asked to make the presentation as interactive as possible, and to do that, we're going to use Mentimeter. It's an online tool. There's a QR code, which will take you to the website. You go to menti.com and enter that code. And then you will be logged in as a participant from your smartphone. That code will still be at the top of every slide as we go through. So don't worry, type in the menti.com and type in the code as shown. Once you're there, if you click on the like icon, which I think is at the bottom there, you should be able, yes, there's one person clicked on, you should be able to show me that you're there. So click on that like icon. I'll wait a few minutes to see that some other people have got there.
Okay, Kim, if you can just share your screen again with us.
Oh,
If you can close the screen of your presentation and open it again. Yeah, if you can just share the screen again with us, so we'll be able to.
it says I am sharing,
Okay, let us check it again.
but I'm clearly not sharing my presentation.
So please share the presentation with us.
That's it up there now. But I don't know why you can't see it.
If you can just close this one and then share it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can just close the screen and then click on the star on your presentation.
Hang on. So you want me to stop screen sharing?
We want you to start it again.
I haven't stopped yet. Hang on. There you are. I'm stopping now. So you want me to start screen sharing again? It doesn't give me a screen to share, so I don't know what I'm sharing.
Okay, Kim, if you can just share it, the presentation that you have, if you can try sharing it again, and we'll be able to see your screen and we'll let you know if we can see it.
It won't let me do it.
Yeah, the first window that you have.
Sorry?
The first window that you had, if you can go back to share again.
That's what I'm trying to do now. And it says start screen sharing, but it's not letting me do it.
Okay, so meanwhile, you can let us know the app that we are using. Yeah, now it is. Okay.
Every time I screen share, it throws me out.
Okay, so Kim, what we can do is we can start this otherwise with the audience, and we'll catch up with the screen sharing later. And the audience is sitting and waiting for you. We can start then.
So you just want me to talk?
Yeah, you can, and then we can just interact from here through the mic. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, everybody. It does keep throwing me out of this. Can you hear me now?
If you can just email it to Zohaib and we'll play it from here.
I can't because it's an interactive sharing.
Okay. All right. So can we try?
I don't think I can. And no, I can't. Let me share.
If you just click on share and select the first option on your window.
It doesn't give me any options. That's the problem. I'm just trying now, Zohab, to send you the Mentimeter.
Perfect. Give me that.
Okay, that would be great. That would be great.
So while that's going, let me, I was going to practice using the tool and that's no good. So let me talk to you a little bit about teacher education and the area I am researching at the moment. I'm looking at the work of someone called Jean Murray. She developed a term called second order practice. Now, first order practice is what all of you teachers do in the classroom. You teach each other, you share with each other, you work with the students in the classroom. What you do with the students is first order practice. Second order practice, as Murray suggests, is what we do when we are working in teacher education, when we are working with teachers to actually help them develop their practice. That's second order practice. Now, it's more complex because those second order practitioners, the teacher educators, are involved in both the processes of both producing and reproducing what happens in school, the discourses and practices of schooling, as Murray calls it, but also working with you to help you work with your students. So you can see there's sort of a hierarchy of order in this. Hence it's called second order practices. Now, my learning objectives for this session were to work with you to develop an understanding of the efficacious teacher educator. That's the successful teacher educator, the educator who works well with other teachers to support their learning in the classroom. I wanted to share my research development on a concept of what I'm calling distance and online learning. That's the two things together. And I wanted to reflect on how understanding of learning for teachers can enhance student outcomes. But what it might be good for you to do now is just, and I know you can't see the learning planned, is to just write down what you want to get out of this activity today, what you want to get out of thinking about teacher education. I will send you all of the PowerPoint once it's finally finished, because I did it on Mentimeter, and unfortunately it's more difficult to send that. I'm wondering if Zohaib has received it and whether he can present it.
All right, Kim. So the audience is going to scan the QR code and then we'll be connected with you. Okay?
Oh, you have it now. Excellent. So I can see that at least 2 people have liked it, but that might just be Zohab and me.
So, no, you'll see more, inshallah, in a minute. We've just got the QR code and they'll be scanning it up.
Excellent. Oh, lovely. Yes, people are beginning to come in. There are 11, 13. We can see them on, well, I can certainly see them on my presentation. That's wonderful. And a great relief to me, I have to say. And probably to Zoheb too. Excellent. So I've moved it on to the next. Zoheb, can you move on to the next screen, please? And there's a question on there. How is the conference going? And what I'd like you to do is use one word, not one letter, one word. It is anonymous. No one else can
Can you hear me?
see. Yes, I can.
All right, so what we've done is we've made the QR code from the Menti link and the audience has now scanned it. However, I cannot control the Menti PPT. You can from your end, I guess.
I am, yes.
Great.
So certainly people are in there and they're now answering the questions. So it might be on their smartphones that they all
Yes,
see everything.
everybody can see that, yeah.
Great. So people are saying pretty good. Wait, right. It's amazing. Keep going. Oh, lovely. We're getting, you can repeat words that others have said. Of course, as a word cloud, it would show the bigger, show words that are informative as being much bigger. Good. So we've had 11 people. I believe there's over 100 of you in there. So that's lovely. Lots more people. So the biggest word showing I can see is amazing. And that is fantastic. I would really love to show you the word cloud because it's quite exciting to see. Oh no, great has overtaken amazing. Great is better. So this is clearly a very useful conference for you. I'm going to move you on to the next slide. And on your slides, actually, I believe on your phones, you will be able to see my slides, even if you can't see them. Good, yes, I can see. This is what Murray, I was talking about Jean Murray and what she says, that second order practitioners, and she wrote about it in her PhD writing in 2002, are involved in the process of both producing and reproducing the discourses and practices of schooling. Now, she goes on to say that they do that with and for their students, and the producing and reproducing of academic discourses about education as their discipline or subject in. Now, HE is higher education. She's using that term. Now, what that means is that when you're talking to teachers, instead of just telling them how to do it, as a teacher educator, I actually do the pedagogy, the first order pedagogy. I actually practice it. I engage with them. I give activities. I interact. And then we step back and look at what I've done. So at one level, you could say, today I've done this activity with you, and stepping back and looking at what you have done in talking about the different things. Now, these are my learning objectives. And I'll read them so that everyone can actually know what they are. They're to develop the understanding of efficacious teacher education. I'm deliberately using the word efficacious, whereas most other literature uses the word effective teacher education. If I just put up these 3 learning objectives, I'm breaking my own argument. I'm ruining my argument. It's not supposed to be teacher-led. It's supposed to be interactive. So Here's another example of interactivity, and you could probably also adapt it in your classroom. I'm going to ask you how you will, and I will, know you've achieved these 3 learning objectives.
Kim, people can now see the Mentimeter on the larger screen, right?
Excellent.
They can see you, and they can also see what's happening on the Mentimeter on their phone screens as well, and on the larger screen.
That's lovely. So we're back in business. That's excellent. So you can see all 3 learning objectives. I don't need to read them out as such. Talk to the person next to you. What will you do to achieve these learning objectives? What will you see? What will you be doing in this conference to know that you have achieved? What will be, and the word is success criteria. So please talk to the person next to you. I can't see you, so I don't know if you're talking, but I hope you are. In some classrooms, these have been used to learning objectives. Teachers use the acronym WALT. We are learning to, W-A-L-T. And the success criteria are WILF, what I'm looking for. I'm not over keen on WILF because it implies it's all teacher led. It's what I'm looking for. I think success criteria is important with you knowing what you are looking for as a person who's learning. So I'd also say it for my students in the classroom, even very young children. How will I know you have achieved? So think about what you will be able to do at the end of this presentation that you cannot do now. Write some of these ideas down because I want you to share them in a moment. I'm going to put them up on, I'm going to move this slide on in a moment. By talking to each other using peer, you feel more confident too about what you're saying, particularly because you can't ask me, what do you mean, miss? You can ask your colleague, what do you think she means? And you can feel more confident in doing it. And there's no wrong answers. So here we are, I've moved it on. You can submit multiple responses. You just type them on in your screen, having discussed with your peer. Now type them into your phone. You can write as many as you want, and again, they're anonymous. No one can know who is doing this. Lovely. I will be able to learn how to implement the things I will learn in this session practically. Excellent. We should be able to explain it in simple words by using AFL tools. Individual feedback of students or written tasks. Oh gosh, there's lots of ones coming in. It's interesting that a lot of people are saying through AFL. I'm sure you all know that AFL stands for Assessment for Learning. You might have to move the Mentimeter up a bit so that we can see all of the different things happening. I hope you can see that some of the activities I am doing with you now are using assessment for learning. I've asked you to think about your success criteria. That's an assessment for learning approach. I've asked you to talk to a peer before you did that. That's an assessment for learning approach. There are some really good submissions coming up here. And it is interesting to try and do this with your students in the classroom, because students in the classroom frequently think they've got to do it right for you, whereas actually learning is about them, not you. I was talking with Dylan William recently. Now, Dylan William is one of the gurus who wrote about assessment for learning. And one of the things he said was he wishes he didn't call it AFL, Assessment for Learning. He wishes he'd called it Assessment for Teaching, which is a very different way of thinking about it. So I am so pleased. There's loads of, I've got over 38 responses here. Thank you very much indeed. Those are really great. I'm going to move us on to the next slide, because it is always important as a researcher to set out your own position. And this is my pedagogical approach. So my approach is that learning is constructed through process within different subject areas and through interaction with the environment, involving teachers and other learners, which Vygotsky and colleagues talk about, Watkins and colleagues talk about, and Illerus, who's I like his approach to learning, talks about. It results in learning being dynamic and changing, informed by reflection within a community or even communities of practice. Now, I put the reference there. This is actually my statement. It comes from a doctoral assignment I wrote last year. So currently it's unpublished, but it does belong to me and cannot be copied. And that's just a warning, because it will appear in Turnitin, because just like other places, our doctorate, we all have to use it. I'm hoping that that's relatively clear for you. It's quite complex, isn't it? It's because my pedagogical approach uses a lot of different things. It uses interaction. It uses lots of discussion and talking with different people. Now, here is the term efficacious. Much of the literature uses the term effective, but the word effective is very much a governmental word. Governments want to prove that what they are doing, the money they're spending in schools, gives outcomes that parents and voters in particular would be pleased with. So I explored what the literature and research said about effective professional development, but I've rejected it because it implies there's a simple solution. And there isn't a simple solution. If there were, we'd all be millionaires. Learning is very complex. It's affected by lots of things, dependent on context, circumstances. So what works in one country doesn't work in another country, which is why colonialism is wrong. For us to say, do it this way, is wrong, because you are the experts in your own country. Even one classroom, what you do in one classroom may not work in another classroom, another similar classroom. And we have to remember that what works for one student may not work for another. So I use the term efficacious because measuring effective is very difficult. Efficacious relates to being effective, therefore, within those complex contexts. So this was something that I produced in analysis of all the literature. Simply put, I identified 4 elements that will be present in effective, what I'm now calling efficacious professional development. And those 4 terms are at the top: features, forms, key players, and factors. They describe the pedagogic types. Features and forms particularly describe the pedagogy types. The key players are those who are important in ensuring that these are available, because actually without key players, efficacious professional development isn't going to work. And the different factors are there which may affect the reception and outcome of the professional development. Things like culture, policy. You know, it's all very well saying be interactive with the children in your classroom, but if your government says you've got to teach like this, that's much more difficult to do. So I use this table to identify the potential success of the PGC Teacher Development Programme, recognising even these cannot be achieved. None of these can be achieved unless the participants are engaged. I can't unpack it all in this short presentation, so let me show you in more depth just one example. But first, more interaction. Oh, lots of you ready. Good. What do you understand by the phrase critical friend? So I'm asking you, there should be 4 options ready. Can you see the options? What do you understand by the term critical friend? I think you have to click the activity. Oh yes, people can see it now, but no one is. Good. Lots of people putting in. Actually, I'm being unfair. I think all of them are correct at one level, but the bluntness of this tool doesn't allow for the nuance of the question. For the programme, we've written a whole booklet for the critical friend, so you can't describe it in just one term. And we believe that the critical friend, that booklet, is an example of effectiveness, and that the critical friend themselves, so they're not part of the course, there's someone each participant teacher on the course chooses to be with them, is an example of effectiveness or efficacious in the following way. And this, the next slide, shows the role of the critical friend with the elements highlighted from my analysis to show this is what the critical friend does. So actually, this shows the real complexity of learning and of measuring efficacious professional development for teachers, because it's in all, there's an element there in all of the features that the role of the critical friend plays in my work. That in the program, they model effective learning and teaching strategies. They observe, they collaborate, they're doing coaching and mentoring, they're doing formative assessment, they're a peer, so structured peer support. They're doing professional dialogue and conversations. They are peers, so they're key players, but they're also supporting, particularly, I think, the culture. I suspect there's other elements that they will be supporting as well, but it is more difficult to show those as we go through. It's the same table, therefore, with elements that belong to efficacious. So, a little bit now about the analysis of my research. I need to start by explaining my research approach. I used an analysis to find the hidden reality of what really goes on. You can observe, you can ask questions, you can ask open-ended questions, you can do lots of things, but why things are actually happening, which is the research I'm trying to do, is much more difficult. So first of all, the process of the analysis is very much still ongoing. My approach is what I call pseudo action research. Now, action research is a particular practitioner methodological approach. It has to have 4 things available in it. It has to have change, so you have to plan to change something. It has to have cycles. It has to have co-researchers who can be the participants you're doing the change with in your practice. And it has to have you as the insider researcher. So those 4 elements are very important in action research. A lot of what is called action research does not always have those 4 elements in. So when I do action research, I work with the participants of my practice. The reason this case study is not action research and why I'm calling it pseudo action research is because I'm not changing anything. The practice is already happening. I've already written with my colleagues the program. It's already going out. So I'm not changing anything, but it does have cycles of action, data collection. And it does have participants. So I see the participant teachers and my colleagues, the tutors, as co-researchers with me. And of course, I'm very much an insider researcher. The 3 cycles started with, the first one was semi-structured interviews with tutors. Then I did a document scrutiny. I scrutinized documents from the program, but also material that students who had opted into the participant teachers who had opted into the research, I scrutinized their portfolios and their essays. And then that's the second cycle. And the third cycle, which I've just conducted, was focus groups working with participant teachers and asking them about their thoughts. So that gives me raw data, which I group and then form codes to generate themes. But I'm also using a critical approach, critical realism, as to theorize my learning. And this is critical realism. I've developed this sort of diagram to show you what it's about. Roy Basker, I shared a room with him at the IOE for a year or so. He was a very, very clever person, a world scholar status. He developed the concept of critical realism. I have to say that when I shared the room with him, he used to talk to me, and much of what he said went right over the top of my head. I didn't understand what he meant. But I'm beginning to understand a little. His argument is that there are three domains. The empirical domain, which is how we know things. So we can measure, we collect data. And for my research, it's action, research, and ethnography are part of those. Then there's the actual domain, what it actually is. The PG postgraduate certificate, professional graduate certificate in teacher development is effective CPD, and I've already demonstrated that. But then is the real domain, and this is the domain that is the most difficult to explore because it's asking the question, why does it happen? And some of the answers to that are in the concepts of second order practice by Jean Murray, your critical friends, and the professional conversations that teachers have together. A way of explaining critical realism, another simple way if you like, that diagram there shows my research, but if you think about a rainy day, we can measure the rain, the empirical, we can collect data about it. How do we know? We can go out, we can measure how much rain is falling, we can see what's happening around, how the effect the rain has on different things. The actual is what it is. You know, if you're stood out in the rain, you can feel it, you get wet, it's dripping on you. You have to wear different clothes. But the real is, why does it happen? And that's an understanding of the science behind it all, and including theory. So actually the real for rain, why does rain fall down, for example, is because of gravity. And gravity is just a theory in science. It's not proven, but we all accept gravity now. And that's how I'm trying to move understand teacher education pedagogies in the real domain. Why do they happen? The efficacious ones, why are they successful? So on my first cycle, when I did semi-interviews with the teachers, I've now moved on to the next slide. I looked at the data and I realized that much of it was in the empirical domain, that the approaches of what we do were actually in the actual domain. So we as teachers, teacher educators observe, present, we have portfolios, we use essays, we have online learning, we have blended learning, distance learning. All these came from my semi-structured interviews from the tutors. The critical friend, the virtual face-to-face activity we do, modelling, research, peer feedback, oral feedback, all of these were really important. How do we know why it happens is through dialogue and discussion, reflection, differentiation, and this is a complex word in English, reciprocity. Reciprocity is that interaction between people as we go. But also in the real domain, there are challenges which may affect our pedagogies: gender, culture, hierarchy, the different roles we play, the language we use, and particularly when I'm working with international teachers for whom English is not a first language, and the experiences people have found. So that table shows the themes and codes that came from my analysis. As I said, it's still going on. I'm doing...
Professor Kim, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Apologies, we're left with 5 minutes, and
Oh, sorry.
then we'll give further 5 minutes to the audience to ask questions. I have a slip where there are plenty of questions, so we'll be taking those as well. So if you take the next 5 minutes to just wrap the Mentimeter thing up, we can
Thank
move.
you. Will do. Okay, so that was my document analysis. I'm not going to go through that in any... So here's a little bit more interaction for you. These were statements that came out of my document analysis. They came from participant teachers in the program, and I'd like you to have a go at rating those different statements. So I think you slide things over. You can go, you slide on your screen, you slide over. That's lovely. That's nice. As people interact, you can actually see. I'm presuming you can see the changes. Brilliant. So you like all of them, mainly. I think that the three top ones at the moment are: discussing with colleagues helps enhance my teaching strategies, the internet is a valuable tool for research knowledge, and active learning is only effective if it helps develop students' knowledge. Yes. I'm going to move it on very quickly. Distance learning, this is a definition: activities written down and accessed by students, and these are the written activities for module 1 and 2. And online learning are the use of tools, teacher or student led, to enhance engagement. Now, I was going to get you to share examples, but I'm going to actually move it on because I need to explain distance and online, which is the term that I'm trying to use. You can tap or drag options so to put them in order. Open-ended activities with multiple responses. Virtual face-to-face to explain or explore activities using Teams, Zoom or Google Meet, or even something like this now. Assessment for learning using peer and self-reflective ipsative feedback. Conversations following observation of teaching, and analysis of observations. I don't think anyone is actually... Oh, yes, there we go. Lovely. Conversations, yes. No. I'm going to give you just a few minutes longer to put those in. I've got 1 minute left, I notice. Conversations certainly seems to be one of the most popular. Okay, I'm going to... People are still putting in. Thank you very much. I'm going to move it on, though. This is the almost last slide. These were the learning objectives. I said, these are my success criteria. That responses to interactive activities will use language and terms that show understanding, and they certainly did. Questions asked or comments, and I've got questions I actually had prepared questions this way. So you can write some in there, or we can do it any other way you want to. Thank
All
you
right.
very
So
much, everyone.
thank you so much, Professor Kim. Apologies once again for that earlier hiccup to you and the audience, of course. I have 3 questions here with me. The first one being, kindly elaborate a little more on the term critical realism with examples.
Okay, it's quite a challenging thing to elaborate on that. Critical realism, as I said, it has those 3 domains. You could think about it as an iceberg. You all know the picture of an iceberg, and we're always told, you know, the bit you can see above the water is much smaller, about 10%. The whole rest of it is right down underneath the surface. So another way of thinking about critical realism is that the stuff you can measure is on top, but we have to get into a different dimension to get underneath to measure the depth of the iceberg. And actually, we might not even be able to get right down to the bottom of the iceberg because of the limitations to our ability to get down there. So that's another way of explaining critical realism. It is, I mean, Roy Basker has written a whole range of books. I have to say they are very, very deep and difficult to understand. He is talking in critical realism about 2 aspects of philosophical research: ontology, which is about things, and epistemology, which is about the nature of things. And he argues that there is and this is hard to say, an epistemological fallacy, that we know about things and we don't know why we know. But for a good example is, you wouldn't, if you were doing research about crocodiles, you wouldn't choose to interview the crocodile because you know its nature. You know that a crocodile can't speak to you. Well, none that I know could. So that's an epistemological fallacy to say that you would use interviewing to look at a crocodile. That's what critical realism is all about, using criticality to understand the reality of what you're looking at.
Thank you so much, Professor Kim.
It's hard.
One last question. Somebody has asked, how can I effectively assess student learning in an online setting?
I think you can certainly observe and see how the student is engaging with you, if you can see them. So, of course, I have no sense of how interaction is happening here because I can't see you. I can only hear from Zohab. And that's actually been quite a challenge for me in this presentation. How do I assess them? Look at using Mentimeter. I've got a lot of information from all of you about how you feel. No one's names, it's completely anonymous. But I've got information about how you feel about some of the things that were coming out of my data collection. I think the complexity of learning is a major challenge, but slowly discovering new tools, we can use those to help us enhance. Remembering that the assessment about how our students have engaged with something, not what they've engaged, is sometimes more powerful. Does that make sense?
Definitely it does. Thank you so much, Professor Kim. Time's up. And I would also like to thank our audience for attending this session. To the audience, the next session begins in 10 minutes. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Professor Kim. The audience is
Thank you.
definitely clapping for you.
I can hear that. Thank you very much, everybody.
Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Dear audience, we'd like you to please settle down so that we can start this session.
Chairs. God forbid if I wasn't.
No, you can sit. Okay.
So सिर्फ लॉग क्यों किया? Thank you very much.
All right, so we'll begin. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the 16th edition of School of Tomorrow events, Guardians of the Future, Shaping Tomorrow with Generative AI. The non-profit SOT event series was launched by Beaconhouse in 2000 to engage global communities in conversations that shape the future of schools and societies. I would like to thank Google for Education, the lead sponsor for SOT 2023, and their partner TechValley, our titanium sponsor UBL. Other sponsors include My Backpack, MK Books, Elite Bank Limited, Habib Bank Limited, Bateen, and Interwood. We also thank our SOT supporters, including Paramount Books and Nestle Pure Life, who have contributed to this year's event. My name is Sadia Chand, and I'm branch head at Beaconhouse F74 campus. Please take a moment to note these important housekeeping points. Please ensure your cell phones are silent. In case of emergency, the exit point is at the back. Always stay calm and follow directions. Please use the SOT app to scan the QR code for Q&A and feedback. Share your thoughts on social media using the hashtag Guardians of the Future and hashtag SOT 2023. If you need assistance, our ushers are here to help. For questions, please either use the flashcards provided by the ushers or use the mobile phone. This panel discussion will last for about 45 minutes, followed by 15 minutes of quick question and answers. Now I'd like to introduce the moderator of the session, Ms. Iram Naqvi. Ms. Iram Naqvi has a background in counseling, psychology, and mental health neuroscience. She excels in in-person and online therapy. Her experience covers education with leadership roles in student guidance, counseling, and management in various settings. She initiated a student well-being program at Beaconhouse school system, providing teacher training and parent awareness sessions. Her blend of academic expertise and practical experience uniquely equips her to tackle academic environmental challenges. Ms. Naqvi, you're please welcome on the stage.
Thank you for being here at the end of the day on the graveyard shift, and I hope we'll keep you entertained for this session. So I'd like to introduce my panel. Welcome to all my panelists, and I guess I'll go according to where we are seated. So Muscat, with over 2 decades in the educational sector, Philip is the current director of curriculum at We Learn Academy, Thailand, a trailblazer in project-based learning and educational consultancy. A seasoned mentor to coaches, Philip is also an established thought leader with a co-authored book on mindfulness in education and numerous articles on innovative pedagogies like PBL and e-learning. Welcome, Philip.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Ambar Shamsi. Ambar Shamsi is Director, Center for Excellence in Journalism at the Institute of Business Administration. Ms. Shamsi is an award-winning multimedia journalist, political commentator, and free speech advocate with a wide-ranging experience in television, radio, online, and the print media. Welcome, Ambar. Thank you. Maha Chishti. Maha is lawyer and founder of Manush, an organization working for the rights of the most marginalized community, the Khwaja Siras, providing them with vocational skills to keep them off the streets and indulge them in a more conducive environment for a better tomorrow. Welcome, Maha.
Thank you so much.
Taimur Malik. Taimur is a senior partner at Kalam Law, a legal 500 ranked firm in Pakistan, and was called to the bar from the Honorable Society of Lincoln's Inn and has an MBA from Oxford University. He is also the founder of Pakistan's multi-dimensional law and justice initiative, quotingthelaw.com, and has initiated many technologies enabled access to justice initiatives. Welcome, Taimur.
Thank you.
Julaikas, who's joining us online. Julaikas, Director of Education, is a leader in education with a career that spans almost 3 decades, with a background that stretches from early childhood to higher education. Her dedication to project-based learning and learner-centered initiatives has been at the heart of her work. Welcome, Jill. Glad to have you here. So I'd like to begin by asking all of you, how do you personally define inclusivity, and why is it important in our current political, socio-economic context? Anybody can start. Whoever wants to take the question.
I mean, it can be the journalist or the lawyer. So,
well, I mean, does that mean that I'm supposed to start? Was that the hint?
Look,
I mean, lawyers love talking. So why don't you open it up?
So I think inclusivity is key to everything these days. And we can talk about inclusivity in different ways. I think in the context of today's discussion, inclusivity is about including people from diverse backgrounds in a debate, in the media profession or giving them an equal platform for voicing their concerns. But at the same time, as a lawyer, I feel inclusivity in the justice system is key, and it's very important. And that's something that I'm very passionate about, that the justice system in Pakistan it clearly works for the haves and doesn't even exist at times for the have-nots. What we are seeing at the moment in Pakistan, if we talk about that from an inclusivity perspective, I think that also is just something that's hitting close to home in many of our cases. But for an ordinary Pakistani, that issue has been around forever. And in that respect, inclusivity means improving access to justice. But before you can improve access to justice, you need to improve knowledge of what justice is. In most cases, people don't know what laws exist at the moment. Ignorance of law, they say, is no excuse. But first, the public has to come to know what is beyond just a traffic challan or something. What is right and what is wrong. So our laws as a country, as most of you know, are in English language. Our superior court system, the official language of the courts is English. So how do you expect a normal, ordinary Pakistani to be an equal participant in the justice system in Pakistan? So inclusivity from a legal point of view, I feel, is a key topic that needs more discussion and debate.
I guess it's my turn now. The lawyer. It's now the turn for the journalist. Obviously, I'm coming from a media perspective. I'm not an academic. I'm a practitioner. And I'd like to for me, inclusivity is from the perspective of working in newsrooms, as an editor, as somebody who really strongly believes in allowing for diverse voices to be on the media. And if we go back to what the purpose or mission for the media ought to be, the media obviously holds powerful people to account, but it also exerts pressure as a pressure group on certain key issues. So therefore, if there is diversity in newsrooms, if newsrooms are more inclusive of all kinds of people whose voices need to be represented, and that's reflected outwardly, in a public-facing way, on screen, in television, in radio, as well as newspapers. Certain key issues that may be underrepresented or may not have the attention of policymakers would probably get more attention. And I think it really begins, as I said, for me, the key is the newsroom, because I've worked in newsrooms that have not been inclusive or have not been diverse. And I've seen the difference where there have been newsrooms that have been more inclusive. As an example, I worked in the mainstream media, which I think is absolutely criminal how the voices and representation is not diverse enough. Just as a quick example, there are only 2 female bureau chiefs across Pakistan for television channels. There are over 50, 60 television news channels. There's only 2 bureau chiefs in 2 stations, one in Quetta and one in Peshawar. Which there's also only about 5 to 10% female media practitioners registered with press clubs within Pakistan. I'm not talking about, freelancers or contract employees. That's also criminal, because that means you don't have enough women on the media. I'm not talking about, and the kind of quality of representation in the media as well. So how many women are reporters? How many women are on the assignment desk? How many women, for example, are in media management positions? As I said, only 2 bureau chiefs, not a single news director or current affairs director. And that's also reflected, I think that the outcome of that is reflected in the kinds of issues that get picked up in the media. So that's the perspective that I'm coming from in terms of how it's represented. And then I think I'd also like to speak about the pressures or the reasons why you don't have more diverse voices on the media, and why the media isn't more inclusive. The media, obviously, we can't categorize it as a monolith, in the sense that when we think of the media, we tend to think of TV news channels or the mainstream. Obviously, the media is more diverse in itself as well. So there are smaller independent digital news platforms, there's newspapers, there's radio, there's state-owned television, state-owned media outlets as well, and then there's more commercial television media organizations. So there's obviously diversity as well. But we think of the media as mainstream television channels, which is why I'm focusing on that in particular. The outcome is that there are many people who feel that their voices are not projected in the media, they're not represented in the media. And because of that, they will obviously turn to other sources of info, they will obviously turn to other outlets that may not have the gatekeeping abilities that are present in the media. And social media is an example of that, which has obviously shown that if you cannot find your voice in the mainstream, you can obviously create pressure through social media. And there's problems and limitations of that, and I hope we will talk about that as well. So inclusivity is extremely important if we want policymakers to pay attention to issues that are diverse, that are important, particularly, and I'm going to end with this, in countries like Pakistan, in any country really, but just taking Pakistan as an example, which is multi-ethnic as well as multilinguistic, which is why our system of government, for instance, is parliamentary, because it's meant to sort of obviously provide voice, particularly if we talk about the Senate, which is the upper house of parliament as well, which is meant to represent all voices or find policy at all policy levels. Reality is very different, but I mean, I'm just talking about how, the purpose of this and why the media, because it does not provide that kind of representation. I don't think the media is inclusive, nor is it diverse. And that has its own set of problems.
Thanks for that, Amber. Philip, would you like to go next?
Sure. So the question was, what does inclusion mean to me? And I think I don't know. And I think that the more I've thought about this over the last few days, there's been far more questions than answers actually in my own mind. And more questions are coming up as I hear my esteemed colleagues speak. So, Tamer, a couple of questions came up. Because you spoke about access to justice, okay, and that not being inclusive. But then I actually thought the concept of justice clearly is not the same amongst all groups. So actually, isn't that almost a self-defeating argument that who gets to choose which kind of justice is the one that prevails? Or do you believe that that is some kind of objective kind of morally good form of justice? And you also talked about right and wrong. They might not know the difference between right and wrong. But who's right or wrong? Who gets to decide that? And then isn't trying to kind of get people access to that, of the same kind of systems of laws, et cetera, isn't that actually anti-inclusive in some sense?
So, I mean, if I can very briefly answer that, I think it's important to understand, we often say that the judge is not there to provide justice in the, as you may think in the form of equity. The judges in Pakistan and in most other common law countries have to implement the law as has been passed by the parliament. So when we talk about justice, let's say in our context, it's about, is the law as it is in the country today, whether it's right or wrong, whether it's moral or immoral, ethical or not, is another debate. But the way the law is today, is it being implemented properly? The people who have grievances against a particular matter or law, do they have access to justice, to the courts, in an efficient, economical way? And are the judges applying it in the manner that they should? So therefore, I would view inclusivity in that context, in the framework that we have. I don't agree with many of the laws, but as I said, that's another debate. So
thank you for clarifying that. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Maha, would you like to?
So I work with the Khwajah community, and speaking of the Khwajah community, they are the most marginalized, in my opinion, at least in Pakistan. When it comes to marginalized identities, they are most likely to have their voices be dismissed, disrespected, and demobilized. Now, what happens with that is that they're very easily stereotyped and tabooed. So when we speak of the Khwajah community, we can say that, oh, they're just sex workers, or we could say that they're just into illicit activities, drug traffickers, and that's where it stops. You do not discuss further about this topic. What happens because of this is that stereotypes have that problem that they only bring half a story, only a small part of that story forth. To bring the other side of the story to the masses, you have to become that voice of change. And that's something that I've done through my organization, that I've tried to become that voice of change for the Quadrilateral community. At least that's the first step. The second would be educating them about their rights and then employment and so on and so forth. So to bring them to the mainstream and to understand the problems and social issues that they face, the first step would be to become that voice and then to advocate that voice so the masses can understand and empathetic towards social conditioning as well, because for decades the social conditioning has been that this is a Khwaja community, you are not to associate with them, their problems are not really problems. So to change that narrative and that perspective, that is what inclusivity means to me.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Jill, would you like to take that question now?
It's intense to follow such a beautiful response. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that social change and bringing their half of the story. For someone who works in education, spends their time in physical environments around the world, I think inclusivity, as your question was, how do you personally define that? For me, it is a diverse demographic connected with cognitive diversity, understanding that every student's voice, yes, it's our job to lift it out, but also to support in a physical environment the diversity of cognitive, of developmental, of human rights. Bringing that diversity forward, to me, defines inclusivity, creating a space that's spatially proficient in our culture, within our society. So any voice, any background, any demographic has the opportunity, regardless of their cognitive diversity, to share what that voice means within that forum, whatever that forum is. And I think when we talk about inclusivity, it's about really thinking not only demographic diversity, but cognitive diversity. Because as, and forgive me if I can't recall her name exactly, so I don't want to mess it up. But in the sense of, if I'm a sex worker, if I'm a drug trafficker, if I'm a student, a child who comes from an environment that is not cognitively seen as the level that we expect for what we call smart or intelligent, we automatically diminish that voice. And what does that look like, feel like, and sound like when a child enters any kind of environment or an adult? And I think we have to start to look at not only inclusivity around demographics, but also cognitive inclusivity.
Thanks for that, Jill. So building on what Jill said, and I think what all of us have maybe talked about, is that I think education is key in this, that you educate, like you said, for law, people don't even know perhaps the line between what is wrong and what is right. If media is not giving voice to these to the diversity that exists in society, is it because of lack of education? So how do we make this a level playing field? What are the roles that the legal system can play, the media can play, education can play in making this a more level playing field for everybody?
So, I mean, if I can start from the legal perspective, I think inclusivity is also about increasing gender and other representations in the profession. We didn't have a female judge of the Supreme Court till last year. Right? Even now, the number of judges in our superior courts is in single digits, the female judges. So a lot more needs to be done to make the profession and the justice system overall more inclusive. In terms of creating awareness, I think one of the breakthrough mediums has been TikTok for Pakistan in many respects. The platform perhaps is being used for educational purposes, but it's an example of how a medium can be used to increase awareness even on important issues and important topics. We often see, and perhaps my platforms are guilty of that as well, that we create content in English or sometimes in Urdu around important topics and subjects. That's only reaching a certain segment of the society. So if you have to really target tens of millions who are following, people unknown to the crowd in this room on TikTok, I think you need to use different mediums, different languages, and convey the message. There is an eagerness to learn that we know through various campaigns that have been done in Pakistan over the years. And it's a matter of getting that across. And with that, I link it to media, and perhaps Amber can pick on that, is that we have become a talk show country in the sense that, the prime time hours are devoted to political talk shows, not even talk shows on reform, development, manifesto discussion or anything. It's just the same gibberish, on all the shows. Why aren't we doing responsible journalism and media by devoting some of that prime to educational content? And some of that could, of course, in my view, should be on legal issues. Educate the masses. And it's not always about just political cases. I mean, I do political cases as well, but it shouldn't be about that. 99% of the cases in the courts are about inheritance, family disputes, tenancy issues, agricultural land disputes, and so on, contract enforcement. People need to be made aware about rights and responsibilities in respect of those issues. That's what I would say.
Amber, would you like to take them?
Yeah, I get that a lot. Why is the media so irresponsible? Why doesn't it, raise awareness of lots of issues, of diverse issues, because we're talking about diversity and inclusivity. There are obviously a few reasons, and I feel like I always have to be a bit defensive and explain the media, even though I'm a huge critic of the way that the mainstream media, I want to re-emphasize, the mainstream media, I would say, behaves. So the media is primarily commercial. Let's understand this. It needs to make money. And that's one of the sort of contradictions. Media or news outlets actually provide a public good. They provide public information. But at the same time, that public information, that public good is paid for by somebody. It's paid for by advertisers. How those advertisers go to certain media outlets is measured through rating systems. And, if you were talking about TikTok, based on the views that people have on TikTok, on YouTube. So if 50,000 people are watching, an anchor or a commentator who's talking about one particular political party, spreading disinformation, misinformation, and it's getting a lot of views, obviously that will encourage that particular YouTuber, for instance, or TikToker to create more content along the same lines. And that's replicated across media organizations. If talk shows are a very popular format and more people are watching them, there will be more advertisements. Therefore, it is a vicious cycle. I will say around, I think 10, 15 years ago, there was more diversity in terms of programming on the media. But because of state policies, I haven't even spoken about censorship yet, because that actually influences the diversity and inclusivity that you see on screen, or at least what you read and hear. But that's one more factor. But I will say that about 10, 15 years ago, that diversity in program, eventually the audiences were not interested. They were not interested. They were watching these political talk shows. That's why you see less diversity in terms of programming. And somebody obviously has to be willing to take that risk in order to increase, maybe, as you said, more programs about awareness, about issues that are beyond political issues, issues of education, of transgender rights, for instance, and what formats work and why are audiences watching them. Media organizations actually do conduct surveys in-house that are not publicly available. I've seen them, that assess which talk shows are more popular, which guests are more popular, and that's what determines eventually what you see on screen. But there's not enough interest or work being done, and I would suggest this. I joined the Center for Excellence in Journalism at the IBA University about a year and a half ago, And I feel like more academics and media-focused universities, educational institutions need to understand, make that connection between the industry and its issues and problems, as well as public interest journalism. How do we improve viewership, audiences for public interest journalism? You know, that's a study worth doing to understand, to sort of break this code, to sort of break this vicious cycle. I hope that serves as an adequate example. Obviously, there's I could go on and on about this.
No, that was a good example. I would also like to talk about, so we're talking about educating through TikTok, so through social media, or through the media itself, traditional media. How is it that we can change it through curricula in schools? Philip, Jill, whoever.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So, okay, I think, because let's bring it back to some of these driving questions.
Sure.
I think. So, how do global educational paradigms and local cultural narratives interact?
Mm-hmm.
And what challenges arise in maintaining the uniqueness of local identities while integrating into the broader frameworks?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a really good question. Okay, I think it's so important to include both local and global issues in any curricula in these days. So the phrase has been coined many different ways, but it's something along the lines of local citizens with global perspectives is probably the most desirable kind of outcome that we're looking at. So I think that we can have those global competency skills, but then when we're actually looking at actionable projects, we can start at the local level because they're more accessible, they're more realistic.
And they're contextualized, which is very important.
Absolutely right. So I do think that you get the best of both worlds there and the mix that we're looking for. I think that it's really important to have multiple perspectives on all issues, and this is something that I'm quite passionate about actually, and it's quite controversial. I think say that for the most part, education should be valueless. What I mean by that is that the only values that an educational organization should have are epistemic values. Okay. And in terms of views, worldview on anything else, I think that should be let up to the learner to decide.
Mm-hmm.
And there's many reasons for that as well. And look, character education simply doesn't work. There is no debate in objectivism versus constructivism debate. I mean, that's over. It's dead. There's no way that teachers actually transmit knowledge into students in any meaningful way. Everyone, gains their own understandings from their own experience with the world. So you could tell, educators, be kind. Yeah. Well, I don't think they even know what that means, to be honest with you. But you can tell a learner to be kind, and they might be able to parrot that for 15 years of their schooling, but it doesn't mean that they believe it to be right. So I espouse Dewey's moral deliberation in that sense, and it's not new, it's over 100 years old, which any topic, as controversial as you like, your starting point in a school, in an educational situation should be zero. That's what I espouse, and I'll be happy to elaborate.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Okay, so any issue that has moral and ethical implications, which actually, if you think about it, are most, going into that classroom and not trying to take a position that a certain group was right or wrong, or a certain action was desirable or not desirable, that should always be left up to the deliberation of the learner.
Okay, that makes sense. But perhaps at what age are you proposing that kind of education take place? Because I don't think it would work well in the early years, or you think it works well in the early years as well?
It absolutely does work well in the early years, but of course then it's contextual in the same way that you're not, going to try and get an early years learner to find a cure for cancer, okay? But in the same way that you're not going to get them to be thinking about, global kind of maybe conflict and things like that. But they may have a view about some kind of conflict that's happening in their home or happening in their own classroom. But moral deliberation is still the way to go, not telling. Because, okay, again, if you're just actioning rewards and punishment, but behaviorism, which works pretty well for rats and pigeons, but not so much for humans. A learner's, behavior is not changed because they want to change it. They're not changing that behavior because they believe it to be right. Okay, they're changing it because they want to avoid the punishment or receive the reward,
or they want to conform.
Right. Yeah. But I think the way again is to build that understanding through deliberation.
Jill, sorry.
Yeah, please.
Jill, would you like to weigh in on that?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I think, too, to add to what you're saying, if we look at the cognitive experience of educators and the way that we design the structures, not the physical structures, the actual concept, the construct of school, we have to start to experience or expand beyond what we consider a teacher's knowledge to be educationally inclusive of the school building, excluding experts, which then change the actual diversity and understanding and depth of what a teacher is able to provide based upon their own experience. Therefore, if we look at multiple perspectives in education through whether you call it project-based learning, experiential learning, if we don't provide the educators the opportunity to change their own cognitive development as they go through the profession of educating, meaning they should be partnering with lawyers, they should be partnering with journalists so that they have a depth of understanding in order to provide, I find it very interesting, a value list so that their values aren't pushing or projecting within the educational environment. Therefore, you have the ability to bring in culturally diverse experiences for those students to start to shape the way that they are coming up with a conclusion. And to put that in simple terms, if teachers don't have the experience beyond the curricula, which is a very narrow perspective of content being delivered, if we don't provide those multiple perspectives by giving teachers the experiences beyond the school and traditional training, we're never going to actually give entry points to those other experiences because other identities are not allowed across the threshold of a classroom because teachers still own 90% of that space. And until we decide that students truly own the creativity of the spaces they inhabit, then are we truly creating inclusive learning environments that actually give students the opportunity to understand, and going back to what the lawyer said, just some of the experiences even of contract law. I thought that was beautiful. Whether you're a kindergarten student or whether you're an adult, contract law and the way it's perceived and delivered, whatever social media or journalism opportunity is provided, how are we providing our students with equitable access to these different kinds of legal perspectives that we know need a variety of different mediums? And to me, that means we have to look at the ways in which we're providing educator education to really move to that altruistic, valueless piece that Philip is referring to, which I thought was beautiful, Philip, to really bring about student values within that classroom. So I think it's about changing the threshold of what we call innovative or inclusive education in Pakistan, in the US, in all of the countries that we're fortunate enough to be able to move through. How do we start to look at the perspective of an educator and really start to change the dynamics of how an educator connects with a journalist to understand the issues of the mediums that we're using to portray events that students that we want them to experience the real world. I hope that made sense. I got a little
Yes,
excited.
yes, it absolutely does. Thank you for that, Jill.
Iram, I don't know how many have noticed that we are in the backdrop of a very complex and interesting Satkan painting.
Yes,
In the
it is,
backdrop.
it's gorgeous. Yes.
So if I can just read what's written on top, it says, "Aina-e ayyam mein aaj apni ada dekh, mashriq se ubharte hue surat ko zara dekh." So the sun is still rising from the east. It hasn't risen yet. So we still need to look towards the west. So it's great that this panel discussion and the other discussions have a view from the west, so to speak. And perhaps, we don't need to reinvent the wheel on all these issues. We have to take whatever has worked and adapt to our cultural and local requirements and make the most of it.
That's absolutely true. But I think what Jill was saying and what Philip is perhaps saying is also that when you're talking about value-less education or having giving children the agency, giving the learner the agency to decide and to debate and discuss is as old as Socrates, right? Because that's basically what he did, was ask why about everything. So so when we talk about inclusion, then we have to ask, why are we not inclusive? Why are we having this debate on this forum that at this stage and juncture of our lives, why in all the ways that we have evolved, and we are now talking about generative AI, we are not able to do something as basic and simple as being inclusive. Anybody?
So when it comes to social media and inclusion, when I started my organization, it was actually through Instagram that we came on the map, where people could say that, oh, there is an organization working for the rights of the Quadriceps community. When it comes to social media, yes, it did give us the boom that we needed. It gave us a lot of recognition. But with it came a lot of ignorance as well, because whilst we are demonstrating the capabilities and creativity of the Quadriceps community, a lot of people are very ignorant of the cause of that we're working for. A lot of people will purchase the product from us without understanding who made them, why did they make them, why are we employing them. So whilst I would say that it did bring about some social awareness that we wanted to bring about, the lack of education of the Quadriceps community played a vital role in them not understanding the cause, the reason behind the organization. You know, at a very early age in schools, if we're not taught about the marginalized communities, how are we to, if we're 30 years old sitting on social media scrolling through our Instagram, we're just going to see a reel because it's bright and shiny and sparkling. It's just a trending reel and you'll just surpass it. You won't think more of it. So how is that to make an impact, right? Everything on social media in today's world has become a hashtag activism. Anything that's trending. Today it's trending, tomorrow it's not. So how does it make that impact? I remember during COVID, this new narrative had come about that COVID is spreading about specifically through the Quadriceps community because they are still on the streets and they're roaming around and about. So you should stay away from them. I remember people were getting products from us, and months later we would ask them, oh, if you've placed, this tray on your table, please do send us a picture. We'd really like to post it on our page. And they would say, we've obviously still not opened it. Why? It's made by Quadriceps, and COVID is. So do you see that stereotypical nature and that thinking and the lack of understanding that you can't dehumanize a person. You are to give them those rights. I don't think that a pet at home would be treated the same way. And they are human beings, right? So the lack of empathy and humanity, I don't think that social media can really bridge that gap. Yes, you could become a trending a trending hashtag one day, but tomorrow you'll be forgotten. So that's something, I don't think that we can strike that balance there.
I think for that, we need people, champions like her, who focus on on a particular issue and then stick to it as well.
Yes.
And don't just move on with the social media trends. But for me, as a lawyer or as a part of the justice system, when do you think in Pakistan can we see a Khwaja Sira as a judge of the High Court? Right? Even suggesting this, to my friends in the judiciary would perhaps sound comical, unfortunately. But that's where we have to head to. Inclusiveness should not just mean gender equality or gender representation on the bench, but really it has to be inclusive in all respects. And I think the first step is what she's doing. I think you just have to talk about it. You have to promote champions of a particular cause and take it from there. Make it a normal situation to have that discussion.
I'd like to say something. When we come to law, I feel like it's also caused quite a stir when it comes to the Khwaja Sira community, because initially, they were defined under this umbrella term being transgenders. Now suddenly this new term has come about, which is khunsa, nothing that I've heard of before, because Khwaja Sira is the most oldest term to define this community. And now when obviously I am an advocate for their rights, the first question that I'm asked in this post-Mariabi world is that, is it an intersex person? Is it a transgender person? Is it a khunsa? Is it a Khwaja Sira? So would you like to speak on the laws regarding...
Well, I would like to just comment on what you said. You didn't explain to us in the beginning why you were referring to them as Khwaja Sira and not as transgenders, right? But I think many would have subconsciously picked up on the fact that in an English conversation, she was using the term Khwaja Sira. So I think that's why continuing to speak about something and educating the masses and the public is important. The laws, of course, the laws have to change. Laws are not perfect. Laws are clubbing things together. My eldest son is on the autism spectrum. Every few months, my wife tells me what's the most appropriate way of referring to our son. That we have an autistic child, or we have a child on the spectrum, or we have a special needs or a differently abled child. So I think, terms are fine, but it's really their identity is important.
100%.
And the laws around it, again, need to be changed. But who gives them voice? It's again going to be people like you for the Khwaja Sira, or for other communities, somebody else who's really going to give that voice to the marginalized. So I think let's just keep having this conversation.
Thank you.
I think that's really important. But yes, what Maha is doing is brilliant. But I think we all need to give them voice in all our spaces that we all occupy, because I think we occupy spaces in which we can make people be more sensitive to these things, be more inclusive by having conversations, not just on a panel, but in the places that we are working in, so that it becomes normalized, like you're saying. It has to be normalized.
This is decades of social conditioning. When a Khwaja Sira is abandoned from their household and they're onto the streets, they're in this vicious cycle, the Guru Chela system, right? They are made to believe that they were born to be sex workers or drug traffickers, when for the longest time you are made to believe a certain thing that becomes your reality, right? So it is obviously the responsibility of all of us to be able to change that for them. And coming back to the terms, it is very unfortunate that whilst I use the term Khwaja Sira for them today, the most used term to date is still Khusra, the most derogatory term.
That's true.
But by the way, one thing, if you're not already doing it or somebody should do, is try to get them legal inheritance rights from their birth families.
Of course.
So that may help it change.
Just quickly, just like a quick intervention here.
Yes.
Because I saw the time.
Yeah.
I saw the time. And I just want to address this because I think it's a great example of why perhaps the media and social media is failing, right? For instance, in terms of a vulnerable group like Khwaja Siras or transgenders, the transgender community. There have been documentaries and coverage of from the legal aspect, the way their lives are covered. I mean, I used to work for the BBC as a bilingual reporter, and I did a series on Khwaja Siras and how they were physically, there were physical attacks against them in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, for instance. So we all kind of play our role, but it feels a little like it's not enough. And the reason it's not enough, I think, is actually because it really should begin from the educational system.
Yes, I agree.
Because the media is limited, social media has its algorithm and its biases, and it plays into our cognitive biases as well. And because these are both commercial, where the opportunity is actually at the level of education and seeing, and obviously there's fantastic work people are doing, seeing Khaja Siraz as human beings in positions of authority in diverse professions, that matters. But really, it has to begin from the education system.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, we don't see many Khwaja Siraz come to school, right? We don't see representation there. If you have a child on the autistic spectrum, it's very difficult to send them to a regular school because you don't have that support that they will be able, that they will have. So we have to actually empower our education system by empowering and educating teachers, because unless you change the environment in the school by challenging the values and beliefs that we've held for so long, we won't be able to change any of that. So yes, I completely agree with that. So now we're going to the question and answer session part of it. So for Phil and for Jill, how can teachers use EQ to create a more positive and inclusive learning environment?
I think that can be, excuse me, read in a couple of ways. How can teachers use emotional intelligence? Are we talking about that, or are we talking about imbibing it in our learners? So maybe it's both.
I think it's more like if teachers have good EQ, then how? I think if they have good EQ, actually they will create a more positive learning environment.
So okay, yeah. I mean, look, I think the bottom line, and there's a big trend over this past 3 days actually, with the explosion in artificial intelligence. If that's doing all the donkey work for us, the question is, what does it mean to be human, right? Social and emotional aptitudes, I think, that need to be embedded into all of our curricula. And I think that when you've got these, call them your school-wide learning outcomes or your mastery competencies or whatever, that's for the whole school community, right? That's for the teachers, the administrative staff, the learners as well. And for teachers to model that, yes, of course, that's going to become a more positive and inclusive environment. And then as the learners are constantly exposed to that, they get constant opportunities to practice and get feedback. And by the time they graduate, hopefully they'll be much more empathetic, much more self-aware, and just much better human beings.
Jill, do you think, how do we get teachers to be more, to have a higher EQ?
I think providing multiple opportunities and experiences to connect the types of professional experiences that we see on the stage to us in the classroom. I think to physically change the classroom environment, to physically change the design of schools and campuses so that teachers have a suite of spaces or a kit of parts to completely unmoor from these historical anchors of what schools should look like in a real, applicable, everyday. Teachers get rid of borders, get rid of decoration, allow students' identity to shape the physical environment and bring in the identities of people that we are marginalizing, and lift those up. Lift up language and make languages equal. In a Spanish-speaking environment and in my own school, Spanish and English, they are equal and on the same playing level. So cognitive diversity and cognitive perspectives are leveled and equaled. Allow students ownership and identity within the space, changes the emotional intelligence of teachers by allowing those perspectives and entry points for other cultures to rise above their own and feel a sense of space. Students need to own 90% of that space with a multitude of diversity and equity. And I think that's the applicable word on the street thing that we could do and walk away with, is look at the spaces that we are creating now and make sure that they are inculcated with the level of diversity and experience we need to make sure that students have the opportunity to practice kindness, empathy, and understanding.
Yes, and that will only come if it's modeled for them. It can't be taught, but it can be modeled.
Oh, no, it can be taught.
Empathy can be taught?
Absolutely.
And how would you teach empathy?
Okay, so I'm so disappointed. It's just got very exciting. So a lot of my work revolves around the 16 habits of mind.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone's familiar with those, but they're basically 16 cognitive and social emotional dispositions that successful people have.
Mm-hmm.
So if you read the portion of my book, small
a good
plug there.
plug.
Thank you. I talk about exactly how we can embed listening with understanding and empathy into the curriculum, teach it intentionally, and actually measure it as well. And there are different dimensions of that, Lee, that we can look at. So the first thing is a simple one. The knowledge of what it means. Okay, that's kind of dimension one. Second, the awareness of context where the application of listening with understanding and empathy may have positive outcomes. So that's dimension two. Dimension three is then the ability to actually apply that when needed. Dimension four, to actually realize that there are benefits over these cognitive behaviors and dispositions over others, i.e. anger and jealousy and all of those other things. And then number five is the commitment to actually go on a journey of development and always improve on all of these. And everything can be measured in education. So I hope that answers.
Okay, that does answer.
Can I just add too that I think if you're going to talk about needs and conditions, you have to look at leadership, because if you want to teach and build empathy, teachers have to be in an environment that allows what you just talked about to be nurtured. So therefore, we have to have school leaders, school administration, and a society that supports that kind of growth and development. So the needs and conditions that must exist in a classroom must exist in a societal realm in order to empower teachers to be able to do that. So if you're talking about modeling, that has to be multi-tiered intervention systems, the same thing that we would do with students. So what does that multi-tiered intervention system look like at the school leadership level and at the school management level?
Yes, thank you, Raju.
I know that this is not related to education, but I do want to say that you can rewire people's brains. And then the reason I'm saying that a little bit, and it's coming from a perspective that is the opposite of empathy, hate speech, for instance, which you see a lot of on social media. Let's also understand that one of the purposes of hate speech is to silence people who come from smaller, less powerful groups who may be marginalized, etc., by maybe a group that is more powerful or is more majoritarian. So I was speaking to a neuroscientist who's from Delhi. This is part of a project I was working on with UNESCO. And, they've been experimenting with how to train even older people, not even just young minds, how to retrain their brains in order to be more empathetic, to be more tolerant, to be more inclusive. So it is, I just want to say that it is even possible just to retrain the brain.
Yes,
yeah.
Thank you. And by the way, I mean, that definitely is education, because what we talk about now is the convergence of neuroscience, of education and psychology, right? And that comes down to this growth versus fixed mindset, right? That we can always grow, and we can, as you say, rewire our brains to a certain degree. So absolutely, that's
to a very large extent. You can rewire your brain to a very large extent.
And until the moment that we pass.
Yes,
absolutely.
As long as you want to, if you want to be open-minded and want to keep learning. The last question is for you, Maha.
Yes.
In what ways can various organizations be effective in supporting transgender rights and inclusivity?
When it comes to other organizations, I think they are putting work that is required, that is advocacy of their rights on social media and in general. So there is awareness of their rights. And they are trying to create more conducive environments. There are a lot of organizations who have created salons, because a lot of Khwajasaras, they mostly identify themselves as females. So they like to, dress up, take care of themselves, look a certain way. So that is happening. However, the obstacle that comes is that most political authorities, these legal authorities, they become an obstacle. We can all agree that they hold the most power to be able to foster the voices of the marginalized community, right? I'd like to bring in an example. There's this Khwaja, her name is Sana, that we came across. And she shared this experience of hers with us, which was that she was taken to the 6th floor of a building. She was raped by a policeman and then thrown down, due to which she had incurred several injuries, and she was in the hospital for a very long time. So when the people of this country, who are to safeguard the communities and the entire society, when they are indulging in these sorts of things, how are the Khwaja to be able to get their rights, to get that awareness across, and to be able to live peacefully in this community, in the society? I can speak all I want. I can fight with people all I want for their rights. But until or unless these institutions do not join hands with us, unfortunately, we won't be able to bring a change. So the organizations are putting in the work, but it's the masses, it's these authorities, it's this audience that is sitting here to be able to understand what I am advocating and be empathetic towards this cause. That's what's going to bring about the change. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Amma. Thank you to all the panelists. We are out of time. It was a wonderful discussion. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Jill, for joining us online. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
our
you for you,
moderator.
yes. Without you, this would not be very meaningful.
Thanks to the moderator, the panelists, and the guests. Have a great time. We had a great time having SOT 2023. See you next year.